When again on that survey we started asking questions about, so what are the type of applications that you believe are really going to fuel more of your bandwidth? You see the examples here. I've talked about telepresence. I've talked about internet, the 3D HD TV. But what I want to really highlight here, and we're having a dinner with one of our customers last night, it really struck me, is it's about the next generation. Not this generation that's in this room here, but what the next generation is expecting out of bandwidth going forward. And you try to, if you've got young teenagers that are uploading a lot of information, try to reduce the throughput of the internet, and you'll get a war. And one of the examples was, they're going to probably notice it much before you can notice it because you're only just doing emails and stuff. But for them, when they're actually doing high-definition gaming, they're uploading a lot of files, the quality of experience that they're expecting will never be able to go back to lower speed. My last example, very relevant for those who follow basketball in this country, March Madness. And again, the message here is, I think you're familiar with CBS. You can go on the web. They've got over 7 million users that actually watch this live. A lot of them, by the way, do that during working hours, especially in the first round, which we shouldn't obviously recommend. But it's driving bandwidth, so we're okay. The point of this model for me is, again, back to, can they make money? So in 2006, when CBS decided to do this model, they had two choices. They can go and ask for the users to pay $20 per subscription to get access to all the games, or make the model a free access with ad-supported, with advertising as support. And they made a decision to go free with ad. And just to give you an example, in 2009, they've now raised $30 million of advertising for their website. $30 million. If you would have gone back to the old model, that meant that for the type of users, they would have had at $20, they would have had to raise and commit 1.5 million users to $20 for that event. And there was no way they were going to be able to do that. So they took a gutsy move. They went free, but with advertising, and it's paying off. And there's another example of how people actually make money leveraging technology as a way to get better experience. And by the way, they now have gone to high-quality streaming. And do you think they're going to be able to go back to standard video after this? And the next thing they're going to get pushed is more and more higher quality and more bandwidth, again, as a result of that. So I'm hoping by now that I was able to convince you that we're on the verge, that has already started, but on the verge of huge bandwidth growth. And I hear to use, I know overrated, bandwidth explosion and so on, but David Payne actually did this study and tried to set the boundaries of the bandwidth growth. And what's important is the factors, the multipliers. Today, we know on average, most carriers are seeing bandwidth growth between 100% to 150%, so doubling almost every year. Here we're saying that depending on where you stand, by 2011, 2010, you're talking about 10 times more bandwidth to 20 times more bandwidth. And it's really, to me, setting the boundaries of growth and really forcing us to really challenge all our previous assumptions. And I'll give you an example of what happened to us in Nortel. In the late 1990s, 2000, capacity was driving us. We were delivering a lot of 2.5 gig and 10 gig systems. The capacity and customers were driving us to do 40 gig and 80 gig. We need more capacity. You need to come out with the systems. And at that time, we came out with systems that effectively was leveraging, and obviously we had to stress and work the lasers and the APDs and so on, but came out with basically what I would call brute force systems. It didn't take too much time that we realized that we were getting pretty limited. And we were getting to a point where engineering and planning of networks were becoming very, very complicated. You need to understand the type of fiber. You needed to put chromatic dispersion, PMD compensators. As we added ROADMs, it made it even more complicated. And we came to a point that it was actually going the opposite. You're trying to drive the bandwidth growth but effectively making the system much more complicated. And so we basically got into a point where we decided to stop that investment and redirect our team towards basically challenging the impossible. And what we came up with is a very, very simple objective, was to simplify the photonic layer to the point where all the impairments on the fiber, we would manage this by leveraging advanced signal processing that we actually had learned or we knew from microwave and wireless. And so when you think back, Nortel being both optical and also wireless, what we decided to do is augment our optical expertise with some of our specialized wireless and our component talent, and basically introduce what they have done in the wireless world into the optical domain. And that's what people call today DSP or coherent transmission systems. And with it, we've been able to basically come in and reach what I would call the almost impossible by integrating all this coherent receiver technology into CMOS. And we all know that CMOS is probably the best material in terms of scale, in terms of cost. So if you can actually integrate that type of capacity and capability into an ASIC, you'll be able to get to the right cost points. So for me, it was challenging the team on saying status quo, brute force will not meet the requirements that people are looking for from bandwidth. And this allowed us, basically, as you can see on the picture, is a combination of having forward error correction, combination of DSP technology, analog to digital converters, and then as well clock and data recovery all into one ASIC, which is now, with the success we've been having now in the last 6 months, effectively deliver 40 gig and 100 gig systems, especially on fiber. In some places, 10 gig couldn't even work because of PMD or because of some of the fiber impairment. So again, the idea here is, as an industry, we need to start thinking about what are the type of activities, what are the type of innovation that we got to drive so that we can push those boundaries and respond to it's impossible, to yes, it's possible, so because we're going to be having to respond out of necessity of the bandwidth requirements through innovation. This, again, I wanted to show you what's been happening in this optical industry in the last 20 years. And when you know in the 1980s to the 2000, TDM was basically what we pushed the boundaries from 500 megabit to 2.5 and then 10 gig occur. But think about, again, when we went into that second inflection point and what it did to this industry. Remember what happened when WDM and amplifiers was introduced to the market. Think about the impact on the components business. Think about the innovation that occurred at that time. 3D MEMS, tunable lasers, WSS. These are all technology that independently rode that wave of WDM and this industry responded to. I actually believe we're into another wave, a new era, around coherent technologies, leveraging digital capability into the optical world, leveraging DSP technology in the optical world, and start thinking about what could it do as we got to start to respond to this huge bandwidth growth.